I wrote a parting editorial in Politico before I left. I actually spent probably 2 weeks, wrote it, rewrote it again, edited 3 or 4 times. And I get people all the time that actually have read it, and they came up to me and they said, and I actually had a couple football analogies in there, and I said, one of the biggest things that frustrated me about this, and I used the football analogy, are you here to get elected to the Pro Bowl, or are you here to actually win the Super Bowl? Is it about you, or is it about the team? Is it about you, or is it about the country and what we're leaving the next generation? I gave a very similar talk to this to a group up in Allentown a couple months ago, and it was, I titled it Reality versus Politics. I feel the energy in the room dropping, but being real about what can be accomplished, what you're asking for, and frankly, starting fires on both sides of the aisle is frustrating. And you have a lot of outside groups that have a lot of influence that always want to create barriers, and it allows members to jump behind them. Because you know what? We're not doing our jobs as voters. We're not holding their people accountable. Every election cycle comes around. I was part of it because I decided to run for a second term. One of the worst congressional approval ratings of all time, way down in the single digits. But here's the one thing they never talk about in the paper and on television. Congress is at an all-time low. They don't read you the next line in the poll that says, do you approve of the job your member is doing? Because here's what it is. It's the other guy's guy. He's the one messing it up. It's not my guy. I like my guy. I really say check him. Talk to him. That's what they're there for. I encouraged constituents to come in, talk to me, interact with them. You know, frankly, when I walk in a room, I don't hide very well anyway. I'm not going to go over in the corner and it's going to kind of disappear. I get it from both sides, and I was always the type of person that's like, well, I understand where you're coming from, but do you realize it has this negative effect, that negative effect? Why don't we try this stuff and we can agree on some of it? And when you talk to people reasonably and try to bring them along that way, you know what, they usually agree with you. And because it's a personal connection they have, a lot of people don't really care about your politics if they like you and trust you. And there are so many members of Congress that are so afraid to jump out and just talk to people, interact with people, shake someone's hand, look them in the eye. It doesn't happen. It's called retail politics. That's how it happens. We're all hiding behind television commercials, pointing fingers at each other. It's not how, I'm sure there's probably a few people in this room that do business like that, but that's not how you do good business. Everything is about people. And truly, I brought that fact up one time in front of the whole Republican conference, and I was frustrated. I got up and I said, you know what the biggest problem is in the room? No one wants to put the work in. No one wants to go out and do that retail politics. Frankly, I told them, most of you are lazy. So I told my chief of staff probably 3 days after I got sworn in, and hair was on fire about how I was going to vote on whatever particular piece of legislation it was. I looked her in the eye, I said, I can vote on any piece of legislation any way I want to, as long as I'm willing to go home and put the time in and explain it to my constituents. I don't care what the national media says about me, because you know what? It's not about me going on MSNBC or Fox News trying to sell something. It's about me selling that back home. Selling it to the people that elected me to come here and change this. It's the retail politics. It's shaking people's hands. It's communicating with people. It's not that hard. But here's the thing. I had an opportunity early on. I was nervous as hell. It was the first time I got up and spoke in front of the whole conference. And we were going through some stuff. And I always tell, you know, my crazy friends were getting up and chattering a lot. And we got into a point where we're actually trying to have adult discussions in a closed meeting. Chairman of the conference stands up and it says, well, whoever is live tweeting what we're discussing in this room, please stop. It's already on Politico. Behind closed doors. You can't even have an adult discussion about how we're going to attempt to fix stuff. You want to talk about frustrating? That got my blood boiling. I went out to dinner that night with a couple other members, some members of leadership, and I kind of expressed my opinion. And I threw in a football analogy. And he said, you need to get up at conference in the morning and tell them that. And everybody knows the great Terrell Owens story. You know, he's the savior. He's the one that's going to put us over the edge and get us into the Super Bowl and win that Super Bowl. All great. By the way, what was our problem? We couldn't win the NFC Championship game, and who wasn't on the field? Terrell Owens, but people forget that little fact. But to that, what happened the next year? And you look at kind of how he was made up. It was about him. It was about what interview he was going to do on ESPN the night before. So now I have to spend my time, much like I did in Congress a lot of time, figuring out what other member of Congress said something really stupid that I'm going to half attempt to defend their thought processes because I agree with about a 16th of it. That guy, through his antics that following season, collapsed that team. That was 14 years in the NFL, that was the only losing team I was ever on. There's not a lot of people that played that long in the NFL who can say they only played on one losing team. I put that analogy out there, 3 or 4 people. I've said it publicly a couple times. Michelle Bachmann taps another member on the back shoulder and goes, who's Terrell Owens? Obviously didn't get to her, but I think most people got it.